After a dominant performance versus Arkansas, Ole Miss quarterback Jaxson Dart climbs back into our top 10 and pretty high this week for the 2025 NFL Draft quarterback rankings. We're going to discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydays. You know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at TheTalentCode. Can you talk to him, baby?
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, and the other side to this dynamic duel that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Every listen is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft DP. We're talking about a college football week 10 recap, right? So you know what that means. We have to go through the updated quarterback rankings, right? Which guys slid up, which guys slid down, money makers and bag fumblers. We're talking about that also. And then the game ball DP. I had a good weekend, man. One of my guys got married. So I might have lost my voice a little bit, but we're going to get through this podcast and have a good time. Let's get into these quarterback rankings.
You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Guys, if you're new here, what we do every week, every Monday, we update our top 10 quarterback rankings for the 2025 NFL Draft based on typically how guys have played. And this week is no different. At number 1, Cam Ward from Miami. Number 2, Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. Number 3, a guy who's been off the list the past couple of weeks, but is coming off a big-time performance, Jaxson Dart from Ole Miss. Number 4, Dillon Gabriel finally climbed up into the top 5. Number 5, Jalen Milroe. He was on a bye week in week 10. Number 6, Indiana quarterback Curtis Rourke. Number 7, Quinn Ewers, also on a bye week. Number 8, Georgia's Carson Beck. Number 9, Ohio State's Will Howard. And number 10, Syracuse's Kyle McCord. Keith, I want to start with Jaxson Dart, a guy, like I said, he's been off the list for the most part the past couple of weeks. Since we got into SEC play, he hasn't played great, right? He struggled really in the SEC play. What was it, the LSU game? They had the lead, blew that lead. He didn't, you know what I mean? What was the Kentucky game? Like, it's just been very, very uneven play from him. Against Arkansas, he lit Arkansas up. He was 25 of 31. 81% completion, 515 yards passing, and 6 passing touchdowns. He didn't have any turnover-worthy plays, so he didn't put the ball in harm's way. And still yet with him, man, like just his numbers are going to – the eval for Dart is going to be solely off of the film. Like if you're looking at the stat sheet, you're going to say, man, this is a first-round pick. This is a first-round talent. But you got to watch the film for him. I like the fact he was more aggressive in this game. I don't believe they had Trey Harris in this game, if I remember correctly.
I think the young man name was Justin Watkins, I believe.
Jordan, that's who it was. Jordan Watkins.
And he went crazy. I think what they said, he had 4 or 5 touchdowns. He
had 5.
Yeah.
5 touchdowns, 8 catches for 254 yards.
He had a season. He had a season in one game. He just went for and knocked the whole thing out. He made up for lost time.
Listen, I'm gonna go ahead and put myself in the top, statistical category in the SEC in one game. You know what I mean? And it sucks because Antoine, Juice Wells, only 3 catches for 59 yards. Those two, him and Dart, just don't seem to be on the same page at all.
There's no chemistry there, DP. They lack
none.
Right? It's crazy. Because I thought if anybody would have went off, I'm like, okay, this could be a Juice Wells game, right? Yeah. And it's just not happening. Even with Trey Harris not being there, it's just not happening. I think it's one of the things. Hey, I may have to go back to the film and see if it's a Juice thing or see if it's a Jackson thing, right?
Right.
And figure it out from there. DP.
I think it's a little both. I think Jackson, they just don't like. I think timing and rhythm just isn't there between the two. Like there's time where Juice is open and Dart is late, And there's times where Dart throws him in the double coverage, and I'm like, Dart, that is not the right throw, brother. Like, don't do that. You know what I mean? It's just a weird situation with those two.
Yeah, DP, I look at this QB rankings, man, and number 8, right? Carson Beck struggled, right? The Florida game was not good at all. And I know he bounced back and threw a couple of touchdowns. But I look at it and we had this segment a while ago, and I don't know if he's eligible to come back, but
No, senior.
he's not. And I had that thought, and then I had the thought of looking at it like, man, like his draft stock, you know what I'm saying? Like it's hurting. And
Mm-hmm.
seeing the shot on the sideline of like Kirby Smart, like kind of like I guess hugging him, like like grabbing
Yeah.
him, trying to get him to lock in and focus. And it's because I think that Carson Beck is mentally trying to jump over hurdles now. Like he's seeing stuff that's not there, and the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that's there, his eyes aren't wide open to it, right? Is and that it's just a little bit concerning because I'm afraid that it's like snowballing, right, for him. And that's the part that kind of worries me.
Yeah, well, Carson Beck, like you said, he be able to bounce back, right? He did it against Alabama as well. Started with like 3 turnovers and then lit him up in the second half. And it's like, Carson, if we can get this in the beginning of the game, if
Right.
we can get these touchdowns and no interceptions, not in the second half. If you go in the second half, you got 250 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But the first half, you threw for 100 yards and 3 interceptions. That's not the performance we want. We want to get a clean performance out of him. And it's just a guy who has he's just been so inconsistent. And
Mhm.
it's not a talent thing. Like I said, I think it's more mental than anything with him. And I don't know. I feel like if he falls out of the first round, the one thing we can say, Keith, and we end up looking back on it, is like, you know what? That might have been a good thing for you. Because then he'll fall to a better situation rather than
Yeah, no,
going
that,
to a
and
team that's devoid of talent.
yeah, no, and that's the possibility. I guess I don't know where because the turnovers, right? And we're critical of them, and then we know how the NFL is about it, right? Like Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions, and they refused to give him another job, right? Like we had Tommy DeVito out there still, and Jameis. So the interceptions thing is huge, and I just don't know if like NFL teams are going to embrace that. So I don't know, like if his ceiling at this point is a 3rd round quarterback, right? Like, and it's just a
Yeah.
conversation we just gonna have to have because I like it's just like, and I watched a couple of them, like because people was putting clips on Twitter and everything. Like one of them was just flat out bad, right? And
Just
I think
yeah.
even NFL teams are going to look at it like it's very rare that you can have a half of bad football, right? Because most of the NFL teams is a lot more parity. So when you turn the ball over 3 times, you can almost guarantee that you're not winning that game, right? You're not throwing 3 interceptions in a half and then come back and winning most football games.
No, you're right, and I think he's so reliant on throwing between the hashes, whereas
Yeah.
like Beck, we need to get you throwing the ball down the field. And
Mhm.
outside of Arian Smith, I don't know if they have that go-to guy outside the
Yeah.
numbers to go and get it, and stuff like that. But I'll like real quick, Keith, I'm telling you right now, Curtis Rourke gives me. He's not. I think he's much better than Aiden O'Connell, but he gives me that type of vibe in terms of this is a well-experienced quarterback, senior quarterback, play a lot of ball, and we know how the NFL. We've seen it with Anthony Richardson. We've seen it with a lot of young quarterbacks. And we've seen it with Brock Purdy. Teams typically would rather a guy with the experience that can come in and run the offense. Curtis Rourke has that Indiana team rolling. I think they're undefeated, and
Mhm.
they're able to. He's playing just good ball and playing within the system, accurate, anticipatory throws. All that stuff is there on tape for him.
Yeah, nah, he's gonna be a surprising name, right? And I think that he's a guy that draft stock is moving up
Yeah.
and to the right too. It's just somebody to continue to watch out for. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. We talked about the quarterback rankings, right? But which guys are making themselves some money and which guys are fumbling the bag? We're gonna talk about that coming up next.
With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Money makers and bag fumblers, aka stock up and stock down for those who are new to the show. Keith, one of my guys coming out of summer scouting, Jayden Higgins, wide receiver from Iowa State, 16 targets, 10 catches, 140 yards receiving against Texas Tech, and he's been having, and we've talked about them a couple times between him and Jalen Noel on this show. And these again, and this wide receiver class isn't star-studded, but and he also had a receiving touchdown in that game as well. He averaged over 13 yards per catch, around 14 yards per catch. Even the route running, the body control, listed as he's listed at 6'4", 215. And one of the things I really appreciated while watching the tape, I was watching the tape yesterday morning of Jayden Higgins against this Texas Tech defense. This guy plays he plays at his own pace, but he knows how to alter the tempo of his routes, but he can sink. There's a couple times he's a curl route, comeback route machine. He sells the takeoff routes well. Even when guys are giving them 4 to 5 yards of cushion, they're threatened when he comes off the ball because he explodes off the ball, selling that vertical route, and then snaps and sinks down. And to watch him sink his hips, he made guys slip on those curl routes, things like that. He has a release package. He knows how to win versus press coverage. He's good, man.
Yeah, you know what he reminds me of? And it's not the exact player, but some similarities. Like Johnny Wilson, just from the perspective of they move better than what you think they would at that size, right? And I think the same thing goes, for the taller, longer body types. They can actually move pretty good for this size, right? And when we talked about this draft class, right? With the bigger wide receivers, or lack of, he could be one of those guys that people are hey, 6'2-ish, 6'3", I'll take him, right? A potential, maybe a potential X, right, for me. In this class that honestly is still figuring itself up. If he continues to perform well, runs a good 40 time, who knows if he's a top 50 player, and not stamping it, right? But it's just that's how volatile it could be towards the top of this draft class. DP money makers. I'm going with Phil Maffa. And he's a name that we don't discuss a lot. And I feel not only just us, but the draft community period, even in the running back conversation, right? When Clemson does bad, we say Clemson is bad, right? When Clemson does good, we talk about Cade Klubnik, right? We don't talk about Phil Maffa as much. And he almost had 200, I think he had 170 yards rushing and another almost 30 yards receiving. That's almost 200 yards total, right? And I know that Clemson lost the football game, but if there was one thing that was a reassurance, is Phil Maffa's a good running back. And he's a lot better than what the discourse or lack of discourse is around him at the moment.
No, 100%, man. When you are he's listed at 6'1", 230, And
Yeah.
he's a tempo runner. He's patient. He finds his run lanes. He's got light feet, nimble-footed, fleet-of-foot type of runner. But then he's so hard to bring down because he runs behind his pads. He'll stiff arm you. He also, like you said, he can catch the ball out of the backfield for a bigger back. Like you don't see a lot of big backs being comfortable, like catching the ball away from their frame, hand-eye coordination. He's put that work in over the past 2 off seasons, man. So like to see him, yeah, Clemson didn't win that game and everything. That was going to be a tough game for them anyway. Things didn't go well for him, but nonetheless, like he was their lone bright spot. Like they couldn't really get the passing game going. Louisville took away the deep ball from him, things like that. But still, yet 30 carries, 171 yards. And again, everybody, the reason why I keep coming back to this, everybody talks about Ashton Genty. Feels like that's the only back that everybody wants to talk about. And I get it. The Barry Sanders record, he's in the Heisman discussion. But at the same time, this running back group is loaded. And teams are going to be able to find starters top of day 3 if they so choose, right? If you got a veteran that you want to let walk and say, I want to get me a rookie on a team-friendly contract, cost-efficient contract, this is the draft. Like this class has starters 4, maybe even 5 rounds deep, depends on who decides to go back, who has eligibility, and say, you know what? I don't like what the draft board told me in terms of my draft stock. I'm going to go back, cash in 1.2 million NIL, and then come out next year in a class that we don't really know from a running back standpoint. We don't know what the 2026 class even looks like. You know what I mean? We know what the quarterback class looks like, but we don't know what the running back class looks like. Keith, speaking of running backs, a guy that I think 2-3 weeks ago, he was a bag fumbler. He made himself some money. Raheem Sanders.
100%. I was going to talk about him too.
That run, like the touchdown, that looked like, I swear this season has been Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde with Raheem. Because I think you said last time we talked about it, one moment he looks like 2022, 2021 Raheem Sanders. Next moment he looks like 2023 Raheem Sanders. He looked like vintage, healthy, explode. That run, that long run for the touchdown versus A&M, where he just exploded through the line of scrimmage and just outran everyone. And I was just like, I was like, okay, what is this? Like, what is going on with Raheem Sanders? 20 carries, 144 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns. We questioned, Keith, like, was the decision to go to South Carolina the right decision for him? Overall, I think it's been a good decision.
Yeah, it's because Arkansas hasn't been great either, right? So, it may have been a lateral move in a sense, right? But it's been a solid situation for him. I agree with that. DP, you might just keep going with these running backs, right? Omarion Hampton, against Florida State, he went crazy. 30 carries for 172 yards, and then another 3 receptions for 93 yards. So you're talking about almost 300 yards in total. And this is a guy, like you talked about, right? The RB1 conversation. We talked about this on the last podcast. Watch out for this guy. Like he can ball. He's a really good football player at the end of the day. He can tote the rock. And then I think with him having those high volume numbers, DP, it shows well because I think teams are starting to like look at it now like, wait, he can be the one guy, right? Like he can just be my RB1. So definitely Omarion Hampton, somebody that made himself some money.
No, 100%, Keith. And we always say this: what goes up must come down.
Yep.
Miller Moss. I think for me with Miller Moss, I've felt like this for the past couple of weeks, maybe the last month, that he that he needs to go back. You know, quarterback out of USC, 6'2", 205 against Washington. By the way, Washington's defensive coordinator is Bill Belichick's son. So I'm not surprised that their defense has been giving quarterbacks some problems because that's the son of one of the best defensive minds of all time in football. But Miller Moss was 30 of 50, 60% completion percentage, 293 yards passing. He had 2 passing touchdowns, but he had 3 interceptions. And I looked at those interceptions. I was watching all 22 of them. One of them was a Hail Mary. So I'm that's right before the half. Don't care about that. I never really count those. But the 2 interceptions he did throw, one was a crossing route, and he just instead of like putting it between the numbers, he tried to lead the receiver. He threw it with like too much velocity, and the receiver's kind of throttling down the middle of the field, like open, like expecting the ball on the chest, and he like throws it out in front of him, hits the receiver's hands, it's a tip drill, goes to DB. The second one that like was bad was the simply just going through his reads, and I love the fact that he surveys the field and goes through his progressions, but he came back to the read he was going to throw, and there's a linebacker staring him dead in the face, and he just threw it right to him, and I was like, Miller, no. Like, it was just like, and that was a game that was, and the thing about it, that game was close, guys. Yeah. That was a close game. That was
it was a 1 point, right?
One possession. It was 26-21, like 26-21. It's just tough. It was tough. So Miller Moss absolutely is a quarterback that we probably do not hear his name called until the 2026 NFL draft. Tough outing against Steven Belichick.
Yeah, no, and I think when I watch after, looking at the results and just the way this season has went, right, it's just about the high that was when they beat LSU opening week to where they are now. It's not good, right? And it seems like there's a lot of things that need to be fine-tuned with USC, but I agree Miller Moss probably just
Lincoln Riley, Keith, the last 24 games, he's 12-12.
Wow.
I saw a stat about that. Like, whoa, he's 12-12. You 500 in the last 24 games. Okay, all right. Might have to have a discussion over there in SoCal. I'm just saying.
Yeah, they probably will, DP. They probably will, man. And obviously, back from I have to talk about, real quick, just mention Carson Beck. We talked about him in the QB rankings. Yeah. It's a tough outing, and it's just something we have to monitor going down the stretch, right? Just what does he do for himself and then also Georgia football. But DP, it's time to make those appearances, man. Coach K, Coach DP, hopping into those locker rooms and passing out the game balls. Got that segment coming up next.
Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, 40 FREE free online courses, including Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and a brand new documentary-style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/locked-on to register. Hillsdale.edu/locked-on. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch or an urge in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you placed your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Don't want to miss out on this deal. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Coach DP and Coach K giving out the game balls from week 10 of college football to these potential 2025 NFL draft prospects. Keith, I'm going to Iowa to my guy, a guy who's actually in the conversation for me in that RB2 conversation with Omarion Hampton, while Omarion Hampton's kind of on the that fringe RB1 discussion as well. Caleb Johnson, man, a dude who's been absolutely just balling for an Iowa team that has no passing attack whatsoever.
Ever.
Whatsoever.
I was watching this game, right? And, they were winning and they were separating themselves. It was one of those drives. It was Iowa's going to win this game. And I was just thinking, I'm like, how do they do this, right? Just totally ignore passing the football for decades on end. and still have a good program. Like you
Keith,
just know they're not throwing the football. Like you talking about one
no,
dimensional. They are the definition of a one-dimensional program, right? And it's been like that for a
93
long
yards
time.
passing. They finished the game with under 100 yards passing, but they ran the ball 52 times for 340 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns.
That's
He was
crazy.
a big part of that.
Yep.
23 carries, 132 yards, average about roughly 5.7, 5.8 yards per carry, and 3 rushing touchdowns. And what I love, Keith, this wasn't one of those situations like, and this ain't no dig at Ashton, but Ashton was getting a lot of big time run, like big long runs early in the season. And it's like it inflated a lot of his numbers because when you have 60, 70, multiple 60, 70 yard runs in the game, your numbers just look crazy. With Caleb Johnson, it was just a standard day at work. His longest run was 16 yards, but he had 5 rushes over 10 yards with 10 plus yards. This is a guy that can run inside zone. He can run the outside zone game, but I think Caleb Johnson, listed as what, like 6, I think he's 6 foot 230, 225. He's lean. He doesn't even look like he's a true 230. Like he is running 220, 225, but he's strong, he's physical, light-footed. This is one of the best backs in all of college football. And on the season this year, 19 rushing touchdowns. He has not gone a game this year without going for a rushing touchdown. He has a rushing touchdown, at least one, in every single game he's played. This young man is an absolute beast, man. I got to give him my game ball because he was part of the reason why they were able to pull away. They were up 7-3. He scored the touchdown to put them up 14-7. When it was up 14-3, I'm sorry. When it was 14-3, it's still a game. He scored to put them up 21-3. And then the bottom dropped, and they just kept, it was just a wrap after that. So Caleb Johnson, Iowa running back, top 3 running back in this class, gets my game ball.
Yeah. DP, no, I like him. You know who he reminds me of? And it's how do I say this? It's not a 1-to-1, but when I watched them, it's like similar styles as far as like, we talk about those runway runners, right? That like get the runway, they kind of high hipped, like Breece Hall in a sense. I think he's a more physical version of Breece Hall, but I think their stature as far as them being high cut, and getting those run lanes, they do some of the same things, right? And so he's another guy that could just be a good value back. I don't know, I when I watched him, I got more of a late 3rd, early 4th-ish type vibe from him. Thought he was talented, but I would draft him in that arena, and then also think that like, hey, I could probably get RB1 value out of him too because he is a thumper. And he's showing that he can tote the rock a lot. DP, I'm gonna hop in the locker room, man. And my game ball it's going to South Carolina, right? I'm gonna just give it to the whole team. And the reason is I'm going to the locker room. I'm excited, right? I'm giving out a rah-rah speech. And what my speech is talking about is that, fellas, the name of this game and the name of life, right, is about getting knocked down and getting back up. We had 2 big time matchups that we let fall through our hands, LSU and Alabama, and we had every reason to give up and say, you know what, it's just the same old South Carolina, right? But y'all got up one more time and we completed the mission. And this is how good we should be. Now, this is momentum for the program, right? And I look at those guys, and we talked about on this podcast. If you beat LSU, you beat Alabama, they may be the best team in the SEC, right? Like we literally talking about South Carolina. That's how crazy the SEC is this year. But I'm sitting there and I was like, nah, the game ball is going to South Carolina. Those guys got up again for another high-ranked matchup, and they brought it to them, DP. They was the most physical team for a Texas A&M team that's physical in the trenches. But we kept talking about, hey, South Carolina has a defensive line. Like you need to pay attention to.
that front four is crazy.
Get after it.
To be able to get after the quarterback, and one of them being an 18-year-old, and he looks like one of the top 7 to 5 pass rushers in all of college football amongst seniors. Kyle Kennard making himself almost a top 50 lock, if not already. Like that team, Lenore Sellers talked about it. Like the young quarterback is starting to it's slowing down for him, things like that. And they're getting the ball to different guys. Raheem Sanders going. That was a hard fought win. That was a physical win. They earned every bit of that. And like you said, man, if they knock off Bama and LSU, even if you drop the Ole Miss game, if you knock off those two, you're a top 10 team because you got one loss.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like you sit in a totally different spot, and this is how the SEC is. I think even with that loss, so this is how much them beating LSU and Bama, right? And as you're talking about the one loss, which I agree with you, is that even with A&M losing yesterday, they're still towards the top. Like there's
Yeah.
just like a three-way tie now, and so South Carolina would have been in that mix,
Yep.
and Bama and LSU would have been all the way out, right? And then now you're talking about South Carolina on the same level with is South Carolina, Texas, Texas A&M, in Georgia, right? And
Yeah.
that's crazy in itself to think about. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come with us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers on tomorrow's episode. So, guys, we got perfect prospect pairing. I'm taking Tennessee volunteer edge rusher James Pierce Jr. to the NFC. We're going to talk about that and more on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.